Welcome to Inside the Set with SETDECOR, a series that focuses on the design and decor of the stories that excite us and ignite our imagination, where we discuss the collaboration between set decorators and production designers and hear first-hand accounts of how these works of art came to be, from their inception, ideas on a page, to completion, when we get to sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Inside the Set with SETDECOR. I'm your host today, Susan Benjamin, a longtime member of the Set Decorator Society of America. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with the production designer and the set decorator from Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, Stefania Cella and Kris Moran. Welcome to you both. I'm a longtime Springsteen fan. I'm an East Coaster. And I just want to know, Stefania, what happened when you got the call? And, did you just fall off your chair?
Yeah. The best call was when he asked me to go with him in April 24 to visit Bruce in Ashbury Park.
Oh my God, you got to visit him in Asbury Park.
He welcomed us in his house, in his recording studio, which is in his property. And then he took us around with his Bronco to show us all the places that where he grew up and the places that were relevant to the story than we were saying, including the house where he recorded Nebraska.
Was the house that you eventually shot that you found, was it based on that house?
Loosely was the two elements where the water, the lake, we wanted to be near the lake. We kept one detail, which was the orange carpet in the bedroom. We wanted to give a sense of coldness in terms of he rented a house. There was nothing personal. There was not his personal stuff. We wanted clearly not to show it as a lived-in place. And I felt that the architecture of the house, when you have a set, then it needs to be kind of bare inside. The structure needs to be solid enough to maintain a screen time and not, be more interesting. So the original house was a ranch style house, but was also renovated many times and didn't really have originality anymore. So we scouted for a long time and we finally found this house that was structurally was untouched from the 40s and 50s, and inside was untouched from the 80s. We redid all of it. And then Kris can also chip in of how much we did, carpet, the kitchen was not a kitchen, was a dining room. So we obviously we emptied it out and we redid it all. But architectonically, the structure was strong enough to, be self-sustained.
I was very impressed with that house because I thought you both did an amazing job. It was a period piece, but you didn't lean into that, making it like a showroom for a 1970s period.
No wallpapers.
Oh, you did have wallpaper because I actually
know, but
saw
that's
that.
just the bedroom.
Yes, but you know what? I was going to comment on that. I love your work, Stefania, because for me, there's always an element to it that's not, it's not that it's incongruous. It's absolutely supposed to be there, but it's not the expected thing that you would think would be there.
That was a wallpaper from the cover of At the Edge of Darkness. And actually, Bruce commented on it when he came on set. He was like, that was not there. And I said to him, well, but I would like to give an homage to your past. And I'm sure fan will recognize where that come from.
It was amazing to see that. And I was like, there she is. I love that. But, going back to the conversation about this set, I'm sure for you, Kris, this had to be, since most of the film is shot, or a good portion of what our film is about, what this film is about, these couple of months when he's writing this album, which is really the catharsis of, his childhood. And here he is in this, kind of rented house that's not supposed to have too much personality. But because you're not putting that much in it, the pieces that you are putting in it have to be correct, I assume, like, so tell me about your process with Stefania. And also, did you get to meet the boss?
Yes. Bruce was on set like every day. He was
Oh
there.
my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You knew him from before, though. Kris, you knew him from before.
Yeah, I'm actually from Asbury Park, and I've done projects with Bruce previously.
So you said that Bruce was on the set all the time. Did he have a lot to do? Did he feed you photographs of his childhood house? Did he have a lot to do with the set decoration?
No, we did all the research. There's so much research out there.
The foundation on the Mammoth University was very helpful, and Kris and I went to visit it, and they open up their archive for us, like a Polaroid and photograph. He gave us a couple of pieces, like his hand portrait. I know he gave some t-shirt to our costume designer, some of the soldier that are in this childhood home where he's on. And he was very emotional when Scott brought him into his childhood home. He became I saw him very emotional twice on his childhood home and in the carousel of Ashbury Park, because I think that's exactly how, he in his house, he told me, you know my past almost better than I do. So I think those were the two moments where they emotionally touched him the most.
Tell me, because the locations in this movie are very much almost a character in the movie too. They're so specific and iconic, for fans. How did you approach this home? I assume that the exterior was a location and then you built this set?
No, tell them what this is what this house was abandoned. Wasn't abandoned, but it
It
hadn't
was
been
condemned. It was condemned, and it was, was a little bit of a process to make it viable for us to shoot, and the reason why we choose it was the proximity of the tree that, in his childhood home, the tree was actually almost attached to the porch, but it's also the way that Scott and Maza wanted to shoot it. We try not to split the sets in order to give them a flow on shooting in and out. So, we built the bedroom of the house because there were hours and hours of intimacy and recording, so that was necessary. And then we built John Landau's office because we wanted to give a specific look, but everything else is intentionally a location as hard as it was because of the float of the way that they wanted to shoot.
So whose decision was it, the black and white, his memories, the childhood is shot in black and white, which seemed really sharp. And then when you go to current day in the 70s, then we're into color. And then Kris, did you have to approach your furnishing differently for the black and white versus the color?
Well, when we start a job and we, talk about the look, we talk about format, we talk about, colors, color palette and stories. And approaching different photographers of that time. And our basic inspiration was Robert Frank for the 50s and Bruce Davidson for the 80s.
Well, we would photograph everything in black and white as we were
Right.
putting it together or purchasing it or kind of gathering things and, putting soft goods together like carpets and bedspreads and things like that and patterns. And then also the wallpaper in the kitchen. Sometimes with the colors in real life didn't really make sense or didn't work as well as they did, but they did in black and white, and we would, keep that.
Yeah, so that's kind of figuring out, after a while of going shopping and looking at the photographs, you start to notice, oh, I thought that was going to work and it's not working. So then you have to
Exactly.
change your eye and go back out again, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. We wound up, we didn't want it to be, we wanted to maintain some grays and, have a middle ground so it didn't all go black and white. So we were sort of sensitive to that. Yeah.
Because it's not about color, it's about pigmentation and intensity. So, a green, a light green and a light blue are exactly the same gray in black and white. So
Right.
if you
Mhm.
want a contrast, it's having a very dark green and a very light red, almost a pink. Then you have two different colors.
And this kitchen, the kitchen in that house and that house in general, I mean, it was interesting to work in all of the years that the families have been there and
Mhm.
work in all of the textures and the pride and the love and the workmanship, the work that happens in the kitchen and the formality of that maintains in the living room, dining room areas. We have like very formal shears in the dining room and living room, and then in the kitchen, which is sort of more seen as a work area, right?
Right.
Things aren't kept for show so much, right?
Right. And they're not updated as readily. I did. I really loved and appreciated all the textures in the house and the layers in the house. And I thought that was really beautifully done. And I loved the contrast when you went into the Stark house because then you knew, uh-oh, you were in for something different.
For me, I mean, I love things, and I love telling a story with objects and and like in the history of them, and like sort of thinking through the characters of their aspirations and where they are economically and what their current situations are. So I might tend to bring more things to set, but Stefania is so strong about like just it was a great combination because she doesn't care. Like she doesn't care if there's like three things in an entire room. She'll just pull, like she just decided that living room doesn't, we always figured it had a sofa, right? Because that would be, there's a sofa and two chairs. That's like normal. But then she was just like, get rid of a sofa. And I was like, what? She's like, get rid of a soap. She would always be like, get rid of that. I would dress a whole set and she'd be like, get that out, get that out, get that out. And then it would be perfect.
I sound like a really nightmare.
No, I mean,
You sound like somebody with a vision.
No, but
Yeah.
it was perfect. She was right, she was right.
Less is more when you have the right things. And, I just love what you said because I feel that way too. I feel like, you know, the reason why I do set decoration as opposed to interior design work is because I like telling a story. I like a visual story.
There are two moments in the movie that I have seen that those two moments made me feel then what Kris and I wanted to do actually came true. And one is when Bruce and John are sitting on the floor in Bruce rental house, and thanks God they didn't make the bed behind him. They left the bed behind him all messy, which is, the instinct for anybody behind camera would be, except Maza and Scott, but would be, can you stray those bed sheets? Because they were like out of a washer, like completely messy in that moment where he's falling apart. So I was happy about that. Sound crazy with all the stuff that we did. That was like, yes. And then is when his girlfriend crying in the pile of dirty dishes, other things that it's just not normal to see. And we were scouting, and it was like she gotta cry there. She just need to cry there. And you know, I was that's it. My job is done. I was happy with that.
Well,
So
I think it's like, you want the humanity to stay in the frame.
Yeah, it was a really poignant film, and I think even the fans, I know I didn't know I don't like reading reviews or anything before I go to a movie. I had an inkling. So, this wasn't the concert movie of Bruce Springsteen. This was very painful part of his life, and I really enjoyed it because it was so real and it didn't feel like a cliche. So those were the interior, the two important ones, but I did have to ask you, I know you worked with the fabulous Dave Gulick. He was the prop master, and shout out to him because I know that there was a lot of, equipment on this project and it had to be period. So I wanted to move to the recording studios. And how did you have a consultant on that? I mean, certainly Bruce was on the set, but how did you approach the concert scenes and how did you approach the recording studios?
of course, we had several consultants. There was a music producer. That is the power station where he recorded Born in the USA. And so there was just to remove a lot of modernity and, going back 40 years in time, but that is the place where it happened. And,
Wow.
for Bruce, it was, to me, what was important is the Stone Pony needed to be the Stone Pony, the power station needed to be the power station, Asbury Park needed to be Asbury Park. So, we did the house somewhere else, we did his parents' house somewhere else, we do few things here and there, but they were, since it's a movie about music, the music anchor are where they did take place.
So Chris, then how did you source a lot of this stuff? I mean, the one scene where they're actually, cutting grooves in the vinyl, and did you find all of this equipment and.
I was
That's
obsessed
a different,
with the
that's a
late. I'm
different location.
sorry,
Yeah,
not to take anything. I bought it in London. It was an old cutting vinyl, and was from 1934. And we bought it all completely disheveled in London, and we restore it and restart the motor. And to me, the most important things to me was to make that sequence properly, because the movie is about how he was not obsessed, because sound like a negative word, but how he was willing to go a further step than anybody else in order to maintain that sound. So with Scott, we were like, that it needs to be exactly the cutting machine, the cat with that diamond, with the head, exactly what happened. So I went into a spiral of like, I need to get the real one. And we bought it. They actually let me buy it. We ship it. And if you can believe it, there is no one. Then, there were a couple of in United States, but no.
they weren't for sale.
And Chris, I mean, just about the recording studios and the soundboards and everything, where'd you source all of that? I would have been so nervous to put those sets together.
They're there. They are still there.
They're still there as they were.
We didn't do much to this. We took out more than we added. We added, I think, like those panels maybe, and the cables and some some physical editing, like tapes and pencil. We didn't need to do much to this location, to be honest. We brought in carpets, and we made sure that we rented equipment like the correct mic stands and things like that, along with the prop department. We, found people in the city that had those. But I know what you mean, because I have done this before for other movies, create these soundboards and editing suites. But in this case, we actually didn't need to.
Well, that keyboard that you see in this picture is exactly that he used for Born in the USA. And so it was a great moment. The idea that is, it's like it's millions of dollars to get that board now. It's like, it's from the late 60s, early 70s. So they're not, they don't exist anymore. And so be able to go there and have the proper board, the mixing board there was, you
But
can't do
and it's the exact same space that
Yeah,
was in,
exactly.
exactly how it was. So like, I mean, that's the biggest gift you can give somebody, right? I mean, it was just
I would have been so relieved. And even the office, John Lando's office, I thought was great too, because you could really, like you talk about, have the cliche of an Eames chair, but it looked like it belonged there.
I was gonna just say that, like, I feel like that Stefania saw that office exactly how it needed to be, like before it was built. She knew exactly what the vibe in there should be. And it was fun. We know, right, through research, everybody is, enamored with that sort of, well, I say everybody, but we were both sort of enamored of that time period and that design at that executive level was really fun.
The most important thing here was that he didn't have a desk. So I did talk with John Landau, and he was like, I just had an Eames chair in the middle of the office, and then I had, records and books. So I was like, why we would put a desk if his real office was just being a music producer and not an accountant. You actually believe that he would have, a record player, equipment, and not a desk. So we
Exactly.
went for that, Kris, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
I was sure that Bruce had a lot to do with the locations, because it's his, stomping grounds, and that's what this is all about too. But I had to ask you about the diners, because that is quintessential New Jersey. And I love that so many of the scenes were in the diners, and that she worked in a diner. So can you tell me about how you were those his exact diners, or did you doctor any of those, or you just found them and shot in them? How did you approach the diners?
Kris suggested the diner because she's the one that then grew up in Asbury Park, and she's like, there is a diner that is a diner from the 50s. And
Bruce has been there
yeah.
before we, yeah. And it's Frank's, it's called Frank's. And I suggested for lunch, why don't we go to Frank's? So then anyway, we all went to Frank's, and when we got there, Masa loved it. Stefania loved it, because it was it has a cleanness about it, and it's just super authentic. And it's different than the New York feel, the New York diner.
Absolutely. But I mean, then again, you're back in a time period, so you had to change the artwork and some of the things, I'm sure, or not.
Not at Frank's, but in the Manhattan diner, we did do a lot of work, just to bring the palette to where Stefania wanted it. We changed the color of all the seating, the cushions, and on the trim colors and things like that.
We made everything red and green, and we redid all the neon, the signage, the blind count. You won't know then you are in the same place. It was completely different.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I also really liked the choices too, because I like that you didn't go for that, metallic diner
No,
kind of
on my
thing. I
dead
like that.
body.
But this is a really good example of Stefania's color palettes. She has amazing color palettes. I don't know. I love it. Like the maroon and the forest green thing is just like with that kind of turquoise, like, she's just, it's
It's
just
crazy
class.
good, yeah.
Yeah.
But Stefania, I do like your use of color, and I noticed your uses of red in this film I thought were interesting too. They were in places that weren't normally, you wouldn't expect them to see, like in the 70s house, I think the countertops were red, and I really liked that because you had that orange carpet, and I was like, that's a great choice. And then you started to see the reds throughout in different emotional scenes. And
The idea of the palette, because we were, there is again for you what you were saying before, like, the danger of becoming a display of the time. I, we had a photographer from Asbury Park, Joe Maloney, in exactly 81. And of course, we're talking about the bright green, the acid green, the purple, the pink. And so, because we went for a Bruce Davidson color palette, when we were talking about color for the color part with Scott and Maza, I said, instead of talking about color, which color we want to use, why don't we say which color we don't want to use? Let's not use any of these. And then let's say then these four color are the colors then we want to use. And then some stuff is going to need to just be naturally what it is.
Talking about the red countertop, I mean, we created that whole counter. So, and making a red tile countertop is like, it's not really normal for the construction department to put something like that together. So normally it wouldn't happen. Like they would just be like, no, but Stefania got behind it, and we found the right tile, and we kind of like said, no, we really want to do this, like we're going to do this. And, so we didn't normally that something, that kind of build detail would fall through the cracks, and we'd wind up with, Corian or something like that. But that was like a really great moment, I thought, that we kind of fought for. I mean, we didn't have to fight that hard, but anyway, it was nice to do.
And it's so nice. It's so great that you had that collaboration and could go there. And then also, Maza, it sounds like, was really key in working, and of course he's really key. But what I wanted to say is that how closely did you work with him providing the practicals? Because I also like those in the 70s house. I like that you had those little, the odd lamp, that everybody had at that time period that they brought from their grandmother's house with the funky little, scene on the lampshade and and it wasn't the groovy 70s vibe, but everyone had it. And so I thought you had great details like that, but I wanted to know how closely you worked with the DP to provide lighting.
He's very respectful of the art department's work. I feel he has a great respect for Stefania. He was very specific about the lamp shades and what color the light was, and like when he wanted it more pink or more, yellow and things like that. But he comes in gingerly and respects the art department's work. I think Stefania and Masa have such a great relationship.
Well, we did 4 movies together. The relationship that I have with Masa, it's almost unnecessary to talk. We have a very similar sensibility, and we learn to trust each other very much.
It's really nice to be able to have a collaboration, an ongoing collaboration, and that you have an understanding of each other. But yeah, Kris, I don't know if you've worked with Stefania before, but I always think it's a gift when you can really relate to somebody, or, like we always want to do some really fun things and offbeat things, and you found a kismet spirit with Stefania. And I think, Kris, you really bring an eye, a really artistic eye to your shopping. And so I wanted to ask you to talk about that a little bit because I'm impressed with it.
We do a lot of writing between the lines, right? Where there's openings to create parts of the character that aren't necessarily in the script, right? So you take what you get in the script and you kind of go off, and then you have like what the overall vision is, and then you're just trying to like weave all the empty spaces, put things in the empty spaces to sort of tell this, and maybe you don't know if the mom had a job, or if the father, how much money the father was working, if he was consistent, or, there's all those things. And those are all sort of opportunities, I think, that we kind of like can take advantage of to fulfill the space and sort of complete the story, really. I try to see like what they were going for, but they didn't quite get it, like, so what does that look like? And what are the things that they may have collected along the way, trying to present this, thing. So like a lot of times, like, maybe people who are less apt to have lace drapes would have them, because they're aspiring, or they're like, that's their showroom, or that's where they would put their money, right? And that's what's important to them. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and leave it in the middle, right? So like, you don't have to complete everything, or, and I think like that's what maybe feels like it's maybe different, is that like everything doesn't have to be buttoned up so tight, so it's just left there, or it was there, because we leave things in a bowl, we have half-filled projects, we want to darn those socks, but we actually haven't learned how to darn yet, or whatever. I don't know, those kind of little micro stories is how I sort of decide that it's okay to bring something in that maybe doesn't necessarily isn't actually in the script, or make it 100% of sense. But
no, really, really well said. I just looked at the time. I can't believe this is over. I have a million more questions I could keep asking. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your experience on this journey with Bruce?
We could maybe speak for a moment to the Asbury Park.
Oh, we didn't even cover that, the most important part, but
I
yeah.
think it was so beautiful. It was so beautifully shot. And it was also like a very, we took an empty space and just reconfigured it and brought it back to life, really.
So can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I know I would just be raked over the coals if we didn't talk about Asbury Park in this interview. So can you tell me where you shot the carousel scenes, and, just elaborate on what you did and how you went about that?
We shot it in the original carousel house in
But
Asbury.
it was empty, and we had to turn down walls and engineering restructure and redress all of it. She found that, Kris found all the original games that were inside, and we found a carousel that was a little bit smaller than the original one. But yeah.
Wow, where'd you find that? That was unbelievable. I just assumed it was there.
No, it was brought in, but it was a find from my unbelievable staff. I have amazing staff that are great searchers and finders of things as well. So, but we looked at a lot of carousels, and there was this carousel is actually slightly smaller than the original carousel that it was built for, but it works so well to see the rest of the room, so it doesn't, fill the frame and fill the space. But we were able to find many of the original games, the original pinball machines and the photo booth that were actually, and some of the coin op rides that were actually in that space, that had been collected or being used nearby. But this brought a lot of joy to a lot of people.
There were people in Asbury Park that were stopping and like, you guys reopen?
Yeah.
Are you guys gonna reopen the rides? Are you gonna reopen the rides?
Yeah, everybody just loved it. Everybody loved to see the life and lights inside. Yeah.
Because they felt when they were young and was open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that ties it back to the conversation about this film in particular. The locations were as much a part of the character you know, you really couldn't have made this movie anywhere else. I wanted to thank both of you. I think, you know, it was a pleasure talking to both of you, and I'm rooting for you for the nominations.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with SETDECOR. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, SETDECOR.com.